weapon will prosper. No enemy triumph. He will not overcome. He can't scale these walls. Injustice will not win. Hell's gates will not prevail. Not on my time. Not on my watch. I am a watchman, and I take my place. As I wait, I will keep the faith. 'Cause I am a watchman, and I stand my ground. But if I never see it, I will stay the course. I will run the race, I will fight the fight, and I will keep the faith. I keep my eyes fixed on you.
Hello there. Welcome to Noon Prayer Watch. It's Friday. The weekend is here. Shabbat Shalom. Hope you had a good week. This is Jacob coming to you from Osaka, Japan. Thank you for tuning in. Fix my camera there. And or catching up on the replay after the fact. We are here at Noon Prayer Watch on the wall, so to speak, watching, praying, discussing what is happening in our communities, cities, nations, and planet. And any other planets we may go to. Some people are trying to do that right now. We're trying to go to the moon and other places. Today's topic is the future of the Middle East. A very big topic, very relevant, very pertinent to us here in 2025. Every week we read in the news something's happening there. History is being made. So I felt led to talk about that this week. Of course, Israel stuff is going to be thrown in there as well, but as general, the Middle East. In general, we're going to be talking about the Middle East today, but before we talk about the future of the Middle East, we must first also understand the past, where we came from, how we got here. Because as they say, those that do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. And I'm going to preface all of this by talking about memory, by talking about remembrance, which is a very big and important concept in our faith, the Judeo-Christian tradition in the Bible. Remembrance is very important. It tells us to remember things all the time. Remember what the Lord has done for us. Because what happens to us humans is we forget where we came from. We forget what the Lord did for us. We're only focused on the right here and now, not thinking about the future, not thinking about the past. We forget what the Lord has done for us and what He's capable of doing for us in the future. And that's not good. And those that remember are really smart, and they can foresee, they have wisdom, they have experience, and that helps them make correct decisions in the future. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today, is what sort of decisions are our governments, are our leaders going to make, not going to make, and we need to pray for them, and if possible, lobby them to make the correct choices. This generation has a problem with memory. We do not like to remember, not necessarily like to, we just don't. We're not as diligent as we should be. And when you do that, it is easy for people, one, to misremember things or not remember things at all. And two, it lets people with agendas twist things. And I have an example for you today. If you're watching at home on a screen, look at your screen because I'm going to show you something. We have this tweet. I saw this last night and I was like, oh my gosh. I talked to some people about it and it was like, what is this guy's problem? This guy, Zachary Foster, who is he? He is a PhD historian of Palestine, and he said something. The whole internet kind of roasted him for this, or the what do you call it? The political affairs, foreign policy, Twitter sphere roasted him for this. He says that Zionism was unpopular among Jews for the first 6 decades of its Jewish existence, the Zionist movement, to make a state somewhere. It wasn't always going to be in where Israel is. Some people wanted to put it other places. Anyone who tells you that anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism apparently believes that the overwhelming majority of world Jewry were themselves anti-Semitic from 1870 to 1940. Lots of fallacious reasoning here, but it's very interesting. He said he gives a time frame, 1870 to 1940 or 1930s. He says in the first sentence, Zionism was not exactly popular among the Jews. What happened? I'm just going to give you a guess. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because if you don't know, you need to go read a history book. What happened in the 1930s and 1940s? Some big event, catastrophic event that suddenly changed the minds of Jews all over the world on the idea that they needed a nation of their own, because it's kind of harder to survive out in the diaspora. What do you think happened? This guy is completely oblivious to this. And a couple of problems with this. I'll tell you why he's twisting things here. Pull my notes up here so I stay on track. Unpopular, he calls it, does not necessarily equal against. He's equivocating both of these things. It's unpopular, therefore they're anti whatever. That's not necessarily true, and he's completely ignoring the context of the situation. Anti-Zionism for Jewish people also is different from modern people who clearly mask their anti-Semitism with the anti-Zionist label. And they only propose plans and solutions to these problems that endanger the Jews, if not threaten the existence of the Jewish state there. There's no coexistence being sought here by the anti-Zionists. Now, I'm talking about non-Jews. People back in before World War II and all of the bad things that happened there, they were citizens of other nations, even nations like the Ottoman Empire. There were Jews that lived there, and they were proud to be Ottoman citizens. And they lived all over. They weren't necessarily keen on leaving their homes, learning a new language, and moving to Israel, which at the time, before the state was founded, was not a great place to live at all. The Jewish identity for thousands of years had also been revolved around living in different cultures, living in a diaspora, existing within another system. Not a lot of people had an interest in the Zionist project. Some people disagreed with this on religious grounds, which, to be fair to Mr. Forrester, he does talk about that. And it's interesting, in his second tweet, he says that the overwhelming majority of U.S. American Jews were non-Zionist or anti-Zionist. So there's people who didn't care and people who were against it. He doesn't mention the people who didn't care in the initial tweet. That draws you in and, tries to trigger you. Maybe he did that on purpose. I'm not sure. But, anyway, some disagreed on religious grounds, especially the Reformed Jews in America, and that's a factor for why American Jews have not historically been the biggest supporters of the state of Israel. That has changed recently, but it confused me when I was growing up. It still confuses a lot of people. Why don't the Jewish people in America support Israel? There's a religious reason. A lot of people think that Judaism is more spiritual, emotional, not so much a physical thing. They don't need a state. Some ultra orthodox also think it's idolatrous as well, but that's another topic. But anyway, something in the 1930s happened, and suddenly Israel became a lot more popular because people realized living in the diaspora, not the best place to live. I could go on and explain why this is absurd, but I'd rather give an analogy here. Imagine, I mentioned this earlier for some reason, the planet Mars. Right now, there are people thinking about going to Mars, building up stuff, and living there. Elon Musk is one of them, who is a very influential person in modern society today. So let's say people want to go to Mars. As long as I don't have to pay for it, I really don't care. You want to go to Mars? Have at it. I don't want to pay for it. Not planning on going there or living there. Have fun living underground for the rest of your life, because the icy surface of Mars has no breathable air and no magnetosphere to protect you from the sun's radiation like we do here on planet Earth. Earth is a great place to live. Pretty much everybody lives here. It's not popular with me. I'm not against it. You want to do it? Go for it. But I'm not going to be against it. But it's not popular with me. I'm not going to sign up for that. Not going to pay for it. Not going to have at it. Good luck. Let me be. And I think a lot of people would be the same way. Do what you want to do. Most people don't really care. If suddenly Earth becomes very dangerous, uninhabitable, and Mars looks like a better option for humanity, I'm going to change my mind, and a lot of people will too, especially if other people have gone ahead and have built up infrastructure. Mars would be a lot more popular with me. People today don't have a very good memory. It's easy for people like Zach Forrester here to twist the truth and make bad faith arguments for his agenda. Before the state of Israel was created, it was not a good place to live. For over 1,000 years, the caliphs, the Ottoman Empire, all the people that ruled Israel could have built it up, could have built infrastructure, made it a nice place to live, but they didn't. It had a lot of swamps, a lot of malaria. It was a very deadly place to live. And the Jewish people started coming in from Europe and other places, Africa, the rest of the Middle East, and they cleaned it up and they made it a nice place to live, which ironically let the Arab numbers in that area grow higher because people weren't dying from malaria all of the time. And if that had never happened, the people that want to live there and want to take it away from the Jewish people couldn't live there because it would be not a great place to live. So I say all this to say we got to be more aware. We have to be cognizant of history, of the context, not try to, we do not need to be deceived by people out there. So what I want to talk about right now, very quickly, I'm going to just run through some points right here. USA involvement in the Middle East, because we're getting ourselves intricated, is that the right word? Tied up in a lot of negotiations right now. Are we going to make the right decision or not? So let's talk about where we came from here. The USA and the West in general, England, other countries in Europe, they don't have good memories about history when they make their decisions on who to support. And that usually comes back to bite them in the foot later on down the line. And and we have the last 60, 70 years of testimony for that here. We're very short-sighted in who we support. The people there have long memories. They remember back centuries ago. Your city, attacked my city 400 years ago. Now it's time for revenge. And that doesn't make sense to us in the West here. And so the USA and the West usually support whoever they feel like at the current time serves their current strategic and economic interest. They don't really care about ideology or, or religion. And that's apparently the same today here. But the problem is this, is if the person you're supporting in the Middle East today leads to trillions of dollars and money you have to spend for the next 20 years fighting a war that you get absolutely nothing from, does that really serve your economic interests in the long run? I would say no. It also hurts the future generation and the stability of your country. Understanding history and the culture of the Middle East would help avoid such blunders. For example, no one has ever in history conquered the area we call Afghanistan today. We were there for 20 years. We didn't really get all that much done. We left and it quickly reverted back to the way it was before we went in there, we as in Americans. So anyway, and very quickly, before the end of the 1970s, Iran was run by this guy called the Shah. He wasn't the nicest guy, but he served the interests of America, of the UK. And so the USA, the West, backed him. Once he fell during the Iranian Revolution and the current Ayatollah, the Islamic extremists, took over, suddenly we don't like Iran anymore, and USA started backing a guy named Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And later, Saddam Hussein, after we don't like him anymore, we fought him twice. During the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the USA backed the precursor of the Taliban. Later, the leader of the Taliban and his group committed one of the most destructive acts of terrorism in history on 9/11. And then, of course, the USA got tied up in Afghanistan for 2 decades. No one has ever conquered it. We were not successful as well. So what is America doing today? Because we have this new regime in Syria. They have ties to terrorism in the past. They were our enemies in the past. Now we're buddying up to them. Who are we going to support? Will there be negative repercussions down the line? Point number 2, I want to talk about very quickly a historical speed through of the power struggle in the Middle East. For thousands of years in the Middle East, you can even see this in the Bible as well as the history up until this point. Someone is always trying to, by force, take over and take control of the Middle East through war and through strength. Strength is very, very important. Physical, military strength is very important. Diplomacy, economic stuff, not so much. There was also the Cold War between America and the USSR, and embers of that are still burning even to this day, even with the Israel-Palestine stuff going on. It's still burning to this day. Most of the Arab nations, of course, back then sided with the Soviets. They were after World War One and Two. All of those, there were used to be not really any countries. It was open desert, and there were tribes. And then the West started giving random tribes. I don't know if it was, how random it was, but made random borders, gave certain people power. They were suddenly the king of this entire big open area. And so there were kings. There still are today, but some of these kings, their monarchies dissolved, and they switched to socialist autocracies. Places like Iraq, Syria, and Egypt. Gulf nations in the south, like Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc., they remained monarchical to this day, and they are still to this day. And so we also see in recent history a resurgence of radical Islam. You have Sunni and Shia flavors, which we're still dealing with to this day. You have those that use it for political purposes, like Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, as well as what I believe are true radicals like ISIS. They didn't last very long, though. But they're still out there. Actually, remnants of them are. There's also Turkey up in the north. They exist. They're secular, but they pretend not to be. Religion is a powerful tool to control and manipulate people. During this time also, Israel, emerged. And all of these countries tried to make a team and fight them. Weren't very good at it. There was this guy in Egypt named Nasser. He spearheaded multiple attempts, started multiple wars to destroy Israel. He, of course, failed. It is a miracle that Israel has survived this long, especially during that time. It's mainly due to the lack of unity of all of these nations fighting against them, but I also think that God had something to do with it. And the longer you study the history of these conflicts and you see all the miracles that happen, like boneheaded mistakes by the enemy, it's like you read the Old Testament, you see the kind of victories they have in their wars. That same kind of stuff happened in the 20th century, and even now in the 21st century. Some, like the cell phone thing, that's like crazy. Who could even, think up that? But anyway, God has a plan for Israel and the Jewish people. They have not been replaced. That's your daily reminder that replacement theology is not cool or real. Egypt failed. They were trying to be the leader. They failed. There's a vacuum. Saddam Hussein attempted to become the leader of the Middle East, especially now that Iran is not in favor with America anymore. And so Saddam Hussein wants power. There's a new government in Iran, and they're radical Islamists, and Iran's pretty secular. There's also a bunch of Arabs that live in southern Iran, and if I go in there, because Iran's not Arab, they're Persians, but there's Arabs living there, and if I go into the south and take over their oil fields, because I need oil to get power and money, the Arabs are going to help me. The government's weak. I'm going to take over, become powerful. That's what he did. But fun fact, no, none of that worked out, and he had to fight a war for almost a decade. It was very bloody. Over 1 million people died. And as soon as that was over, he realized, I need oil fields. Iran didn't work out. Gonna invade Kuwait. And suddenly, America was like, no, we're not cool with you invading countries for their oil anymore. And then we had the Gulf War happen. And so after the Gulf War, who is in charge? Who is seeking the power? Terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda stepped up to lead the charge against the enemies of the Muslim world. And 9/11 happened. That brought all of the world back to the Middle East. We're still there today, but not in the force that we were, at the beginning during the Bush administration. But during all of this time, some things have happened. Some shifts had happened. There are some consequences here. During the Bush and Obama years, secular autocrats like Saddam Hussein, and I forgot the guy who led Egypt, but they fell during the wars, and also the Arab Spring that Obama helped trigger started the Syrian civil war, which has ended a couple of months ago. And so a new dynamic emerged in the Middle East. There is no one strong power in this area, but you have kind of three groups here. You have Saudi Arabia, the Sunnis, you have Iran, the Shia, and then you have Turkey meddling with things from the north. Iran is as radical as ever, but because Syria has fallen recently, their power has diminished. And so now you see Turkey and UAE, Saudi Arabia, trying to fill in the gap here. This whole Lebanon, Syria, northern Iraq area, it was a flashpoint. Iran was pretty strong in this area, but it's gone. And so now we're trying to fill in the gap. Iran will still try to do things, but their capabilities have been greatly weakened in a lot of different levels. USA is working with Saudi Arabia, I think, in order to stabilize things right now. And you have, of course, from America, a president who looks to make deals. He wants to make a deal right now. He wants to make people happy. He wants to be persuasive. But remember, America doesn't remember history very well sometimes. Often the groups we back end up attacking us later on down the line. And so let's look at some current events that are happening today. I have more things to show you on the screen if you are watching on a screen, computer, or whatever at home. And this is the main thing I wanted to talk about. I saw this earlier this week and I was going to wait and see what actually happened. And it seems like this isn't going to happen here. But the Jerusalem Post posted a very controversial article, kind of clickbaity because there's not actually any substance into it, but it got a lot of people talking. Hopefully, some people are probably trying to push President Trump, to do something here. But the article says Gulf diplomatic sources. We'll see look at the sources in a second. If Trump will announce U.S. recognition of They debate whether Trump will announce U.S. recognition of a Palestinian state. This was updated later that day, so I think it might have had a different headline or something. Does the bottom say anything? The headline of the article has been updated to more accurately reflect the content of the story. I think, don't quote me on this, but the article said that he would announce the PA state, and a lot of people were freaking out about that. But kind of clickbaity, not very good journalism here, guys. Anyway, this is by Ali Hussein from the Media Line. So they're having a bunch of summits in Saudi Arabia right now. They're meeting, talking about things. But if you read down here, will Donald Trump recognize a Palestinian state? A Gulf diplomatic source who declined to be named. This is who is telling us these things, or disclose his position. We have no idea who this guy is or whatever. It could. Obviously, he probably would get in trouble, or if not killed, if this were actually legit. But anybody could say this or make this up. So he says that President Trump will issue a declaration regarding the state of Palestine and American recognition of it. And there will be the establishment of a Palestinian state without the presence of Hamas. Even if that were true, good luck getting Hamas out of the picture. Good luck. I don't actually know. Good luck. Don't even try to do that. It's going to end badly here. You're doing this for peace, as I've said here, and other people have said. You create a Palestinian state that is going to increase the amount of conflict and war in the region, just like in Lebanon, just like in Syria. As long as Iran is out there trying to influence and meddle with things, there's going to be violence and there's going to be war. The embers of war will always be stirred. But that's all this is. All of this drama, all of this stuff. It was an anonymous, unnamed source here. Mr. Huckabee, our ambassador to Israel, denied the statements made by this source on X Twitter Saturday afternoon, saying Israel has no better friend than the U.S. They definitely wouldn't do it without having Israel involved. That would be very, very sketchy here. I also think not all of the nations, like it says right here, Egyptian President El-Sisi and King Abdullah of Jordan have not been invited. They are the two countries closest to Palestine. It would be important for them to be present at any event like this. So I'm going to go ahead and make a guesstimation and say that America is not going to announce a Palestinian state. Don't believe the clickbaity headlines. I could be wrong. You never know. But it doesn't look like that's actually going to happen. But what is happening here is President Trump is cozying up to the new Syrian administration. Shara is the leader. His name used to be al-Golani, but he was a terrorist, and so I think he's trying to rebrand himself. He's lost the terrorist garb, wearing a suit, and changed his name. And so Israel are holding talks with Syria on Shara regime joining the Abraham Accords. Trump urges Syria to join the Abraham Accords, praises him as an attractive, tough guy. He's also really tall, because President Trump is tall. Not that that has anything to do with it. I just didn't realize how tall some of these guys were. So he's there right now. We have to be careful. We have to, Trump said on Tuesday that it was his dream for Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. which I think was something like that was about to happen before the October 7th war started. But anyway, pray for our leaders here right now that they make a decision that is in line with Scripture. Ultimately, we here are concerned about Israel, about dividing the land, about putting them in jeopardy, and it's very possible that because America doesn't necessarily understand the history of the region, that we're not thinking long term like the people here are in the Middle East. They'll make peace. They'll be nice for a time, for 10, 20, 30 years. And then 40, 50 years after everyone has been, disillusioned by the peace, they might attack again. And so we need to pray that there are contingencies put in place to protect the state of Israel and any of our other allies, not just them, any other allies that we have in the region right now. Trump also says he'll lift sanctions on Syria and restore ties with the new president, Sharad. Of course, Israel is not invited to these meetings, and they're quite concerned. So it's also the first time a Syrian leader has met an American president since al-Assad, Bashir's father, met Bill Clinton in the year 2000. So we need to pray, because who knows what's going to happen here. President Trump likes to make deals. He knows how to talk with people, and some of these guys, they're not nice hombres, if you know what I mean, especially like in Qatar and places like that. And we just have to pray that God's will be done here in this situation. Here we go. So we need to pray. Here's my prayer points for today. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Psalms 122 verse 6 talks all about that. We pray for Israel and its leaders that because they might get kind of nervous, and who knows what they try to do. There's the whole "are we going to attack Iran" thing that's always on the fringes of possibility and all that. Pray for wisdom and discernment with President Trump and his diplomatic team in the Middle East. Pray that they make good deals that lead to peace and prosperity in the region, as well as peace and protection for Israel. Pray that he will not be tempted to divide the land. When doing negotiations with these nations, one of the main things they want is a Palestinian state for a variety of reasons, and it's very tempting to offer that as a concession. And it's not going to lead to anything good, both logically as well as spiritually. If that happens, if we support that, it will bring a curse upon our nation. I have witnessed this happen through the Clinton administration, especially the Bush and Obama administrations. We've talked about this for decades at this ministry. Pastor Tim, other leaders here have talked about this for decades. We have witnessed when America, the leader, tries to do something unbiblical, there's judgment that comes on our nation. And if we continue to try to do that, more judgment will come. And we don't want that. We don't want any judgment on our nation. Don't divide the land. It's not going to lead. Islam is not going to foster a peaceful, stable society. It's chaotic. It wants to conquer. It wants to destroy things. And it'll be at the heart of a new state there, if they ever, make one. So, sometimes when you talk about this, I'm just going to throw this out here. When you talk about God judging America for doing unbiblical things, I've met a lot of Christians who get really angry at that because they think that Scripture is like a fairy tale. They say they believe it, but it's like Lord of the Rings or something. It's not actually active today, which we here believe it is. Usually it conflicts with the replacement theology, if we're being honest here. But we believe it's real, and we believe it's active, and we need to be very careful here. We also need to pray that peace comes to Muslim nations, not just Arab nations, but Iran is a Muslim nation that's not Arabic for the most part. Revival. There are rumors of revival happening there right now. We pray that revival will continue to happen there. I have heard there has been a devival, is that a word, of Islam there. A lot of the mosques are empty. People aren't going there because Islam's kind of forced on that nation. It's fairly secular. They also, their heritage is not Islam. It's a different religion that's been basically wiped out. Some people are trying to bring it back, and so that's another issue you got to talk about. But pray that peace will come to these nations, because a peaceful nation that's stable, safe, a lot easier to spread the gospel, because you're not in danger of getting arrested or worse from the government there. And that's what we want. We want the gospel to spread in these nations. Why is that? A lot of people have very apocalyptic, Armageddon like doomsday eschatology, and you don't really hear a lot of people talking about peace and stability coming to these nations, because it doesn't fit that, as they think the world's going to end next year. And so we don't need to pray for that or pursue that, because and it's a very Western American modern way of thinking. It's not necessarily biblical. That's just my opinion, my perspective. The end of the world, if that's what you really want, it's going to come in its time. It could be next year. You never know. I don't think it will be, but it'll come when it's time. We don't know when it is. Jesus literally said that in the Gospels here. And so until that time comes, we in the kingdom need to build. We need to build. We need to advance. We need to be good stewards with the world that God has made us. We expect him to come back at any time, tomorrow, but we build like he won't come back for another century. We're not going to get in trouble if we have all of these projects and we're doing all of these things and he comes back in the middle of it. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing here. And this kind of attitude, I believe, is most beneficial for advancing the kingdom. In the books of Zechariah, Matthew, and Romans, it talks about how the end, the Messiah will not return. That's Jesus. He will not return until Israel turns to him, the one whom he pierced, as they pierced, as Zechariah prophesied long before Jesus came here and died on the cross. Romans, so he's not coming back until they turn to him. Romans 11 says, the one reason they haven't turned back to him is because God has hardened their hearts, and that hardening will not end until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. I'm not an expert, a theologian, or a pastor, but I do not believe the fullness of the Gentiles has come. There's so many groups of Gentiles that have been completely unreached. The gospel hasn't had a fair shot at penetrating and having revival come to those societies here. We have a long way to go. It's going to take some time. Most of the Gentiles that are unsaved and unreached are in Asia, in the Middle East, which we've been talking about today, as well as the Far East, where I live right now. And that's where this ministry, Christian Center Shreveport, is starting to focus some of their efforts towards. We do ministry all over the world, but we really felt led by the Lord to focus on the Far East at this moment. And so revival, the fullness of the Gentiles comes, everything focuses on Israel. Israel turns to the Messiah. That's when all of the stuff ends. And so if you want that to come, got to support spreading the gospel to places like the Middle East, places like the Far East. That's what I think anyway. Could be wrong. I reserve the right to be wrong, but that's what I believe. That's what a lot of people in my generation are starting to believe as well. So we pray that the Lord's will be done, that the kingdom will advance, and that we will be victorious. We will overcome any enemy in our lives. Spiritual, physical, emotional, anything like that. That's it. That's all I have for you today. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell. That's a small way you can help support Christian Center Shreveport, this ministry, and all of the things that we've been talking about here today. So be blessed. Have a great weekend. And remember to always bring order to chaos. I will see you next time. Goodbye.